here we are, another episode of ShiftED podcast. I'm coming to you guys out of Laval, Quebec today, and I'm really excited about this podcast. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I have two amazing educators here, and we're going to talk about ELA in Quebec, in our Anglo communities. There is a Summer Literacy Symposium that was just put together. It happened this past summer, and that's really going to be our focus, kind of what informed that symposium and what happened, what people thought, and what the next steps are. So I have Kathleen Murray and I have Melinda Clifford coming in with us. So thanks so much, guys, for hopping on here and sharing your stories behind this pretty amazing PD that's happening.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Chris.
Really good to see you. Well, Kathleen, we've crossed paths many a times. And it's always a pleasure. Melinda, it's great that we've made these connections as well. Before we jump into all of that stuff, Kathleen, where did it all start for you, education? Why do you love it so much? And give us a little Cole's notes on Kathleen's educational journey.
Wow, I love that question. It starts with the kids and especially the little ones. That's where it started for me. And I've always gone into the classroom saying, I want them to be good, kind, contributing citizens of society. That's the number one. We're going to learn how to read. We're going to learn math. We're going to do all those things. It's super important, but we're all going to go off in our own different ways. What matters most is, are you going to know how to contribute and be giving and selfless and kind? And that's the heart of education. It's the community. So, I love that question.
We could stop this podcast right now. Boom. Yeah, perfect. No, amazing. Thanks, Kathleen, for that. Like, I feel that too. Like, well said. Well said.
Thank you.
Linda, what about you? Where did your educational journey begin and on and on?
My educational journey began on the other side of the world, halfway around the world from here in Sydney, Australia, which is where I started my degree in education, and then ended up moving here and finishing my degree at Bishop's. So I did all my stages and started my career in secondary education here. And again, same as Kathleen, and I think it's the same for teachers across the province. Teachers do it for the kids. So I've been very lucky in my career to have had wonderful students all the way from Sec 1 through to Sec 5.
Amazing. Well, thanks for that. It is. All this is about the kids, right? That's the lens we look through continuously. Is this going to benefit our kids and increase their chance of success in this crazy world that we live in? So as we kind of like focus in on our conversation, again, great to have you guys here. There's this myth, and I'd like to debunk it a little bit. We have a dual language here in Quebec. I mean, French is definitely the main language here in Quebec. And I always had this assumption that our programs were just mirrors of one another. However, there's a nuance, I think, between our English program of language instruction and our French program of instruction that they're not similar, or they're a little bit different. Is that a myth, or is that something that exists? Maybe Melinda, I'll throw that to you.
Sure, I can take this one. So even though they were created at the same time, French language of instruction was created as the language of instruction curriculum for the Francophone sector, whereas ELA, English Language Arts, is a little bit different. It's a literacy-based program, so it's not termed English Language of Instruction. It's really English Language Arts. So while they were conceived around the same time, English Language Arts was conceived as a literacy-based program with a focus on learning the language, so learning the word, and learning the word in order to learn the world around us. So it's really this idea of language is our in to the rest of the world. So it allows us to verbalize our ideas, our beliefs, our culture. All of that happens through language. So I think the philosophy of the program at its conception was a little bit different. And it was created really for the English Anglophone network.
Cool. So there are differences in the Anglo programs.
I think it was very avant-garde at the time. So the elementary curriculum was published in 2001, and it was really focused on the constructivist view of learning. There was a lot of focus on metacognition, which was really avant-garde at the time. There were, help me out here, Kathleen.
Well, I love how our program embeds portfolios, which was a really, important shift in the reform, and unfortunately didn't hold as much as we would have liked it to. But in terms of children really being involved in reflecting on, what they choose to put in their portfolios and how they reflect on, why that's there, because they're progressing, because they're proud of it, because they're able to identify what they've achieved, what they've learned, and then they can identify their goals of where they're going next. That philosophy is still tried and true. That is still, we know, incredibly effective.
And I think there was a realization at the time too that all of the competencies in the program are really equal. So we're looking at reading and writing and oral communication, or talk to learn, as it's in the program. And they play out sort of like on a 33, 34 level in the framework for the evaluation of learning. So there was a recognition even over 20 years ago that talk was just as important as reading and writing. And I think just that is avant-garde for more than 20 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah. And basing it on the constructivist model as well. I mean, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So you guys came together, right? Like, Kathleen, you're on alone right now, right? To the ministry. And what's your main kind of crux of this loan of service that you're on right now?
Gosh, I mean, it was such an exciting opportunity to get to come and work up at the ministry, knowing that we had just finished a project that I was welcomed in on for Oracy, the Oracy Toolkit. So again, that focus on talk and how Melinda uses the term, the expression, help me with the quote, reading and writing float on a sea of talk. And so that was the project that I was invited in on first as a consultant. And from there, knowing that we were going to move into looking at what are the foundational skills for learning how to read, those pieces that teachers talk a lot about and want to know more about, and that aren't currently explicitly present in our program. We know in order to get to the skills, the literacy skills that we want kids to have, that we need that there, but it's not explicitly in there. And so we knew that we were going to be looking at that. And to me, that was just incredibly exciting. What could be more important, right?
Yeah.
So it's been a fun couple of years.
Yeah. And the idea too was to gather expertise through the community, right? Through the Anglo community, with teachers collaborating, kind of looking at it as well, which I found pretty interesting. What was the seed that started it all? I know that there was a research that came out around reading in our schools that the Language Network had worked on. Was that something of a seed that kind of started this idea that we would start doing a PD that would have a life to it, meaning that it would have many years, that it would be over this professional development that you guys have been working on?
Well, certainly the Summer Literacy Symposium grew from that work. So if I can backtrack a little bit, back in 2022, the DEEN Languages Network reached out to our team, so the ELA programs team at the Ministry of Education, to collaborate on a project that would look at how reading translates from the curriculum into practice and into the classroom. And so we collaborated with the ELA consultants from across the province, including Kathleen and Litoral, as well as the private sector. And there were just over maybe 12 of us. So we worked in 3 subcommittees. And one subcommittee looked at curricula from Canada. So we looked at curricula from across the country, as well as some international ELA curricula. We looked at New Zealand and Australia. And another subcommittee was, it was essentially the survey subcommittee. So they surveyed teachers from across the province, elementary teachers, as well as university professors, to gather information on how reading was being taught across the province. And the third subcommittee looked at the research. So what research had come out in the past 20 years since the program was originally published on reading instruction. And that culminated in the Research into Reading report, which the DEEN Languages Network published last May, if I'm not mistaken, which was shared with us and with our director and the sous-ministre. I'm looking for sous-ministre in French. With the sous-ministre.
Sous-ministre.
Yeah, you're looking for it in English, but we don't know. Sous-ministre.
We understand.
And there were recommendations in that report that focused on 2 things. So essentially, what the DEEN Languages Network recommended, better teach reading in the classroom. And so the symposium was something that we could move forward with through Entente Canada Quebec. And we were inspired, for the most part, by the Summer Math Institute that's been running for the last 10 years or so through LCEQ, which is the Leadership Committee for English Education in Quebec. And they've been working on this Summer Math Institute. It's a model of a residential model where teachers go away for 3 days in the summer, and they really focus on some skills that they can take back and implement following the summer straight away in September. And so we decided that we would try and follow this model because it was so successful. So we based our proposition on that. And we reached out to LCEQ to see if they would be interested in collaborating with us to bring the project to fruition. And they're wonderful. I have only good things to say about LCEQ. And the rest is history. And last year was our first Summer Literacy Symposium. And we've got a fabulous steering committee that we worked with for a year to put everything together. And we were able to reach out to some fabulous researchers from across the country who presented last August. And that's it. That's how it came about in any case.
That's amazing. And Kathleen, tell us a little bit about, like, who are some of the keynotes and, like, people that you had come in to kind of, you know, work with you guys and during this first symposium.
So honestly, it's really a dream come true. Like, this is something, you know, Melinda already alluded to it. It's a conversation that had been happening at the languages table for a while. How can we, English language arts consultants, put together something like what the math consultants have? So to watch this happen is amazing. And then we said, well, who are we going to get involved? And as a teacher, I would receive stagiaires from Dr. Sandra Martin-Chang from Concordia Education Department. And I'd only heard amazing things about her. And we knew we had to go and get her. And we found her, and she was on board. And so it started with her. And then from there, reached out to Jean Willette, who works out in New Brunswick at Mount Allison. And then we also reached out to Dr. Helene Deacon, who's at Dalhousie in Nova Scotia. So we're really looking at, we've got East Coast and professors who have had a huge impact already on curricula. Jean's role is vocabulary, and he participated in New Brunswick's updating of their curriculum. So we've got someone who really knows their stuff. Dr. Helene Deacon is the morphology person. And we can get into how exciting morphology is later on in this podcast. It could be a whole podcast unto itself. So that was our core experts that we brought in, not to mention, of course, the amazing consultants that we're working with throughout the province from all the boards. That was year one.
Quite a few participants too. This first
yes,
kick
we
at
did.
the can, right? I mean, I saw the big picture on LCEQ and the write-ups, and I mean, it looks like it was a fabulous experience that everybody's, we're glowing, it seemed, from the photo. I imagine that was taken at the end, or was that more?
Yeah. And people were enthusiastic. We need a picture before we go. And yeah, you see the joy in that photo. There was
absolutely,
there was a lot of excitement as people headed off. It was palpable. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Melinda, you were saying that there were three aspects that research had looked into. Was there one in particular that you guys wanted to address with the symposium this year? And let me get the title of it: Teacher Knowledge. You're the best resource in your class, right? So that was your theme that you guys had. Was that based on, did the research inform that theme? And what does that mean, that title? Like, could you dive a little bit deeper into what's behind that theme?
Sure. Well, we truly believe that teachers play such a critical role in student learning, and the more knowledge teachers have, the better they're able to teach. And we found that out through the survey that we did in the Research into Reading Project too, is that teachers really wanted to focus on the what's the word that I'm looking for?
Well, the mechanics, right? The foundational, the pillars of right? Foundational skills of reading, literacy.
And we wanted to empower educators to, with the tools and the confidence that they need to be better teachers of reading in the classroom.
Interesting. And what is the difference? Because I ran across these two terms, and we sometimes get hung up in education with terminology. But there was foundational literacy skills, and then there's the 5 pillars of reading. Are those connected? Is there a thorough line between those two? Like, I mean, foundational literacy skills, you have metacognitive, self-efficacy, word recognition, etc. The pillars of reading, you have phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension. Could you guys paint a picture of how those can work together, or are they kind of, do they smash into one another?
Well, I think it's a good opportunity to talk about the active view of reading, because there's so much research out there. There's so much work that's been done, and there's so much language around it. And you're right, people can get hung up on, the words that we use. The
flavor of the week, yeah.
Yeah, but what we did is we looked at what Nell Duke and Kelly Cartwright came out with, the active view, and it just beautifully marries all of it into something that we can really visualize in a concrete fashion. And we thought if we use this as our framework for the 3 years, then that's a really great compass, right? Mm. A great way to really, and part of what we really wanted to be careful about, we know they need the phonics. They need all that really core basic, the decoding skills. We need those decoding skills, but not at the cost of comprehension, right? It still all happens together simultaneously. And we didn't want anyone to lose sight of that. So we thought, knowing that we're going to go into year one, and we are going to look at those pieces, those really, what are the first steps of learning how to read? But it's never at the cost of comprehension. But you know what? We're not going to zoom in on that in year one. And we don't want anyone to think that we're neglecting that, right? There's still a whole picture of the reader. And the active view just does such a beautiful job of showing where the metacognition and the self-efficacy and the language skills and the comprehension and the fluency, and it all comes in together as the outcome of a reader. You are reading when you get through all of that.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I came across the active view of reading, and I was curious. Like it seems, and in the end, you guys used that research for a lot of what you were going to deliver during the symposium.
Yeah, it's the theoretical model really that underpins the learning that's happening at the symposium. And really what it does, I mean, it just sort of, it builds on the simple view of reading, and then we had Scarborough's rope, and then now we have the active view of reading. And we really liked the active view because it's got that active self-regulation piece, which is already present in a lot of the program that we have. Like, we find that piece on metacognition and engagement and motivation. And I think that's always been a part of our program. But the word recognition that Kathleen was talking about before is something that we really need to be more explicit about. So we felt that was a good model to help us. And it really sort of outlines those bridging processes too. And it's not, terribly different from the 5 pillars that came out of the National Reading Panel, I think. I mean, you've got fluency in there as part of the bridging. It bridges the word recognition and the comprehension. So that's where the fluency sits, and the morphology and that kind of thing. So we've used that model to really structure the learning that's happening throughout the symposium over the 3 years.
Amazing. And walk us through a day at the symposium. Like, what kind of workshops would I run into? What kind of breakout sessions might I see? How did you guys assemble all this? Like, I'm sure it was a puzzle. But like, what would somebody experience going into the Summer Literacy Symposium?
I'm going to allow Kathleen to field this one, but I would be remiss not to thank our steering committee and all of the work, because Kathleen and I did not do this alone. There were, a number of us working on putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So you can speak to that if you like.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you're mentioning that, because 100%. We were building the plane while flying it, right? For year one, because it is so complex. And there's so much that we want teachers to know. And what is the most important things for the first 3.5 days out of the 3 years, right? In total. So that was really tricky and lots of back and forth. But that's the beauty. I have to also underline the fact that the steering committee is built up of the consultants from across the province, right? So we made sure that we've had perspectives that are coming in from all corners, which I think is really important.
Great collaboration, right? Like, it seems like this whole intent too was like really to get people talking to each other and building relationships and sharing their experiences. And like, I mean, there's the magic right there, right? Like, regardless of what breakouts or workshops offered, right? Like, just having all those brains together in over a 3-day period.
Yeah. And that's why it's in-house. Absolutely. That's why it's a residency program. Because you need to have teachers talking. They're talking before, they're talking after. And so a day is, it's wonderful. You wake up, you have breakfast with new people that you've just met, you get to know each other, and then you go for a session where it's going to be all grade levels together, from grades 1 through to 7, all in one room, learning about things that we all need to know, shared knowledge, basic foundations. And our different leaders, our different professionals are going and they're zooming in on that. And then we go to our breakouts. Well, and that's when we get to get something a little more tailored to our specific needs. So our groups are either grades 1 to 3, 4 to 5, or 6 to 7. And doing the cross cycle was also intentional, right? So that we can really build those bridges. A lot of it was about bridge building, but also recognizing that in our particular landscape of how we learn to read, we have such a wide spectrum of whether it's Anglophones learning to first read in French, and then they first get English language arts in grade 3. So how do we bridge that gap? Where do we tie things together there? Or maybe they're only getting their English language arts in grade 5 for the first time. Or then maybe we've got some Francophone children who are learning to read in English first. So just the plethora of that, right? So it's one of the reasons we did this crossing over, to try to like mix people up, to share their experiences, some cross-pollination, right?
Amazing.
So that's it. So the breakouts zoom in on whatever it was that we all received in large group, and so on and so forth. That's pretty much the wheel turns like that throughout the day.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the initial kind of all together, and then you kind of like zoom down into something more specific that touches whoever wants to go into that breakout.
Yeah. Well, hopefully something practical that then they know, how do I apply this in my grade 6 classroom, or how do I apply this in my grade 2 classroom? So they get it tailored a little bit more to their needs.
Amazing. That's cool. That
Yeah.
sounds like a finely tuned machine as you're flying the plane.
Well, and so if I may,
Yeah.
I know maybe I'm jumping ahead, but we got lots of feedback on that.
Mm-hmm.
And we did our absolute best in year 1 to try to get those breakouts just right. But we know that teachers wanted even more time for talking, even more time for collaboration. You know what? We felt it too. We're like, you know what? We tried to pack in a lot in year 1. We might have been, we thought we did less is more, but I think we were still biting off an awful lot. So we went back to the drawing board and have tweaked things in such a way that there's going to be even more of that time for collaboration. And we've pulled back on a few things, and we've nipped here and nipped there to try to make it even more. Basically, we know our 1.0, it was a success, and we're really proud, but we're super excited about 2.0. And we're grateful to all the participants who said, we'll show up, we'll be your guinea pigs.
Yeah, it's amazing.
We're so grateful
so many
to
participants. Like in the summer too, right? You'd think, oh, everybody's on vacation, their minds are off school, but they're like, no, kids value. They're important. I mean, it's really quite. Melinda, I wanted to ask you too, like, what were your most surprises about this whole experience? Like, what are some of the things that really stuck out to you as wow, I never imagined this would happen, or that were unexpected, that just happen when you bring a bunch of people together that have a shared passion?
So we've got some wonderful surprises, and I think we can let people in on our surprises.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. Yeah.
So we have Adrienne here, who's an educator in BC, and a lot of our teachers are familiar with her. She's presented online to a couple of the school boards in the province already. She'll be coming in person and presenting the keynote, and she'll be doing a little bit of powerful thinking and that critical thinking piece with teachers. We'll be welcoming Karen Filowich. She's a practitioner from Alberta. She was an elementary school teacher. She was a principal and a consultant. She's now an author. And the wonderful thing is too that we're bringing her in the winter. She'll be presenting online to principals, because part of what we want to do is, in order to make this work, I think we've got to go outside the classroom too and ensure that principals in the schools are helping support their teachers. So principals need to know what PD their teachers are getting so that they can support them in the classroom. So we're offering that this winter. We have Dr. Larry Swartz, who is from Ontario. He'll be coming in next year as well. And we'll be thankfully welcoming back Dr. Sandra Martin-Chang, Dr. Jean Willette, and Dr. Helene Deacon from last year as well. And on top of that, we've got some wonderful consultants who'll be running the breakouts as well. So we're we're building capacity, and
we got the best consultants in Quebec, hands down, the best. I mean, you can't find 100%. a better group of people. So the symposium happens in the summer, and you kind of alluded to some winter stuff. How do you keep that continuum going so that what they've captured in the summer feeds their practice, but they still feel like they're supported as they're going through maybe shifting practice or tweaking certain things? What's the continuum with this initiative?
I'm glad you're asking that, because it speaks to the structure and the intent, the proposal of the project in and of itself, right? Because the idea is build capacity. And we know we're not going to get every single teacher coming up in the summer. It's not possible, right? It won't be feasible. So on top of getting the teachers as participants, we also make sure that we're getting the consultants in. And the ones we didn't catch in the first year, just because of limitations of numbers, they're coming up by year 2. And if we've got any new ones or anybody else, there's a year 3. So they participate as participants, right? So the only thing that they end up leading, and this is answering your question in sort of roundabout way, what they end up leading is on the last day, before everybody goes home, they do a reflection session with their people, with their school boards. And for the really smaller boards, well, they get together and they support one another as well to make sure that networking is happening and that support. So it's the building of capacity so that the consultants are matched with their teachers, and then they know that we're still there to support them. They can reach out to us. And there is an expectation of, touch base with your teachers, see what questions they have. They were all handed a reflection journal right off the bat. And it was referenced throughout the entire symposium, and it will be continued to be used as their tool of where am I? Where am I headed? Where have I arrived? Where was I? Right? I don't have to tell you what a reflective journal is, but it's really fun and really exciting. So everybody's on board. It's the collaboration piece. And we just keep checking in with one another. And we get to speak with the Languages Network to see how, so we follow up with them, they follow up with us. So it really is on a continual cycle, if you will. Yeah.
Right. Well, this airplane looks like it's going to be a supersonic airplane eventually, with all the bells and whistles attached to it. How would somebody that hears this get involved if they're like teaching, and they're like, hey, that sounds like something that I would like to be involved in. What's the process for new cohorts?
The first thing would be to reach directly out to your consultant, your ELA consultant at your school board, and let them know that you're interested.
Nice.
It's as simple as that, and they'll put your name on the list. There's a certain number of spots that are allotted, so I would say if you're interested,
the sooner the better.
Your consultant, the sooner the better, indeed.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's probably worth saying registration is already underway. Most people talking to their consultants right now would wind up on a wait list, but there might be a few spots still available for some school boards. So it's worth checking. And if you don't make this year, well, like we said, there's going to be a third cohort. So get your name on the list now for next year.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a great way to kind of, if you've never talked with your ELA consultant, to reach out and say, hey, all right, well, that might not be available this year, but so what else are you up to? Like, start those conversations. Because we're all in this together, right? It is a big happy family, and we all want the best for our children. And I think that some of these things, these initiatives that we organize, particularly these ones that last over time, right? So that the teacher knows that the support's there and that this is a growth and that it's going to require reflection and change a little bit. Yeah, Kathleen?
Well, and that's the idea, right, Chris? Is that it's never over.
Right.
So we're building something and it's really exciting. And like I said, now we've got our 2.0 coming out and it's only going to get better. And the consultants are part of the process. And so for the teachers who say, I can't make it in the summer, that's okay. Because your consultants are learning what to do and they're going to be putting things together bit by bit, one thing at a time. We all just get stronger and better together. So it's never going to be too late, right, to get on the bus. So it's exciting.
Get on the bus, get on the plane, just do it. Your kids deserve it. Our province deserves it. We all deserve it. Anyway, this has been really, really a great chat, guys. Thanks so much to, I feel like these kinds of conversations where we're talking about, chez nous, they're important to have. And it's good to get our voices out there where we can share these really cool, innovative projects that are going on and the intent behind. And it seems to be super well informed as well. And I'm excited for you guys. I'd love to have a chat after the 3 years to kind of maybe a synopsis or a reflective review of, and then the next steps. Because like you said, it never ends. So Thanks so much, guys, for hopping on here and sharing your projects and your ideas and your thoughts. Super entertaining. And I hope to talk to you guys again soon.
Well, thank you for reaching out, for the invitation and giving us that opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.